losing our minds.
Leslie! There's something wrong with this place.
He wants out!
This is my will.
Well, this will be my first video game review, and I want to take care of this review as soon as possible so I can uninstall this game. The Evil Within is a 2014 game that I got to play 6 years later in 2020. And I also played the free DLCs of this game, the Assignment, the Consequence, and the Executioner. And what can I say about this survival horror video game? Well, first, it was directed and produced by Shinji Mikami. Mikami, who is well known to be the creator behind Resident Evil 4, and from some points of view I can even see the influences not only in the Evil Within, not only I can see the influences in gameplay from Resident Evil 4, but some environmental similarities, like you can see the first enemies from the 2014 video game are also people from the countryside, and I think you also get at one time you get into somewhat of a castle. So yeah, you have like the first backdrop. So you have kind of all the backgrounds that you had in Resident Evil 4. You have repeated in the Evil Within, like the countryside, the castle, somewhat not really the swamp level, but there is a level that is flooded in the Evil Within, and you have that you have somewhat of a huge submarine animal. The plot of Evil Within is pretty standard, so the story is nothing to write about. It's nothing that it's gonna win any script, any story awards. The story is there to function, to move the player from one point to the other point, but I'd say the graphics are still impressive even today in 2020. I mean, the game looks beautiful. Well, up close that you can see low resolution textures, but still the game looks very, very good. You can also see a lot of influences in the stylistical choice of this game to Resident Evil 4. Yeah, I'm gonna make a lot of comparisons, although I think the mechanics in gameplay from Resident Evil 4 were a little more, it's interesting, they were a little more polished than in Evil Within, because there are some choices that I couldn't understand they made. So there were some button prompts that appeared when a zombie caught you, which I would have thought that would have been more logical if you didn't use the use button to escape the zombies when they caught you, but to use the melee button to push them away from you. But that's and I kept having this reflex to do that. I'm also gonna get to what the story what is all about, but still I want to focus a little more on the gameplay. In some points of view, so you can see that Shinji Mikami is a well-versed person in history of horror video games, but also in movies. First, I'd like to say that I was able to see some influences not only from Resident Evil 4, but from also Silent Hill 2, I think, because well, okay, let's get into the story, and then I'll tell you the game influences. Well, the story is about so I I even had a little problem remembering what's the name of the protagonist, but now I remember it's Sebastian Castellano. But the main character, he has an interesting story behind him, but the execution is very weak, and the the main protagonist is Grizzly. I am a grizzly detective, and I have alcoholic problems from the story, and I have a wife and a child, and we don't know what happened with them. So it's very the main protagonist is very stereotypical. He's got his Asian partner, I think he's Japanese, and another mysterious partner woman which we don't know what she's all about in the main story, but we find out her whole backstory in the DLC. And the story is about these three policemen who go into an asylum who I think it was called Beacon. Don't remember exactly. And then they are caught up into a paranormal story which they try to save a guy called Leslie, and a doctor called Jimenez tries to help them saving this guy Leslie, and they keep having uh, this main evil character called Ruvik, and the voice acting is functional. The guy who plays Ruvik is Jackie Earl Haley, who some people may know him as Rorschach from Watchmen. And so the voice acting is just there so it can do its job. These characters will soon disappear and no one will ever remember who they were. And I'm sorry to be this critical, but that's the problem that I also read in other reviews for this game, that yes, the characters are very forgettable and the story is forgettable, although I'll admit after the story kept making me guess what was happening. It is kind of uh, typical Resident Evil story, which kind of emulates a lot of action, sci-fi or paranormal American movies, and I'll admit I'm curious to replay this game a second time, just because the game mechanics were very fun. At first, the main game I thought it was gonna be a stealth game, but after I suck. I really suck at stealth games. I never want to play stealth games, but I was so curious to see how this game was that I was prepared to deal with the stealth mechanics at maybe an hour or two into it. But after I think the first hour or the first 45 minutes, you get a lot of weapons and then you realize that this game is not a stealth game. Well, the DLC kind of changes this fact about the game, but still the main game in its game mechanics was very fun to me and I really enjoyed it. The bosses were very imaginative. I really liked the bosses. I really liked the game mechanics. I liked the zombies in this video game. They are very fun to shoot at and to give them headshots, and I liked the you can trip the zombies with shooting them in the knees, and I liked the match mechanic. A lot of stuff gets explained in the games. And now let's go back to the Silent Hill 2 similarities, because some of, as you'll find out as you play more in the game, you'll find out that the enemies inside this game have similarities like you had in Silent Hill 2, where those enemies had some symbolism behind them. I don't really want to get that much into spoilers. As always, I don't spoil story. I only try to give my impressions as much as to get someone to be interested or not. Also, at the same time, some of the mechanics reminded me of Dead Space in how you could kick some enemies and the scares the enemies. There were some similarities, I'd say. Even the classical creepy music sometimes in the background reminded me a lot of Dead Space. Um, other similarities I would say it's with Angel Heart. If people ever saw this movie with Mickey Rourke and Robert De Niro, then people will know what I mean by that. But I can see a lot of influences with Angel Heart, and also some similarities with Jacob's Ladder, which Jacob's Ladder is also a movie that was an influence to Silent Hill 2. So yeah, you can also see, but at the same time, I don't want to spoil those two movies to give that much information, but those are also psychological horrors that I really recommend to see. Maybe to even more understand this video game. Um, I was always intrigued in the story. I um, I liked the hub system. So there is a hub system in this game which I really liked. I liked the when you got to there is some kind of an asylum you keep going to save the video game, and whenever you access the asylum, I really liked that you could hear Claude Debussy's Claire de Lune. Wait, I'll play you a segment. I'm curious if YouTube will copyright strike me for a song that no one, I think, has the rights for. So Claire Debussy's Claire de Lune. Oh, Claude Debussy. Yeah, it's an amazing classical song, but at the same time, the soundtrack in this video game it's also unremarkable. Funny enough, there are some collectibles in the DLCs where you can listen separately to pieces from the soundtrack. And I was like, what? it's it's nothing interesting, but still there are plenty of collectibles that I really liked in the original game, where you could pick up um, parts of a map, and then you could see the map forming in the hub asylum. Um, what else did I? All in all, the game took me 24 hours to finish. Um, yeah, and I would give the main game an 8 out of 10. Also, I want to talk about the DLCs. So I'll talk first about the two DLCs that have to do with Julie Kidman, which is the partner, the other policeman that we don't really know what she's about, and we find out in these two DLCs. And what I liked about the assignment and the consequences was that I really liked the art direction. So the framing in the two DLCs, I think it was more impressive than the framing that they used in the main video game. And I liked the collectibles. I really liked the collectibles because in the two DLCs, because you had like a letter that you could form if you collect them all, and that was interesting to me, and I wanted to, and I replayed some parts of those DLCs to get all those parts to form those two letters. But also at the same time, those two DLCs frustrated me to almost giving up on the DLCs. They were really frustrating. I encountered a boss in the assignment which was very, very annoying. I couldn't stand it. I had to check 2 videos on YouTube to get the tactics so I could finish it, and I could barely finish that boss. A boss that took to so you could to finish that boss you needed 2 minutes and 40 seconds not to be caught by that boss, but it took me like 1 hour to get to that result. So that really frustrated me, and I don't like that in a video game, especially after even the second day when you play again that boss and and you still can't win at it. And remember when I said that the first game I fought at the start that um, I was scared that it will be a stealth game. Well, these two DLCs are mostly stealth. They're mostly stealth, and they mostly recycle backdrops that they used in the previous in the main video game, and they're like, oh, because she's retreading the events from the video game when you see them from her perspective. Yeah, but there are some parts in these two DLCs that they kind of ignore what happened in the previous game. So you could say that in the main game she had kind of the whole time a Glock on her, but no, in these DLCs she mostly doesn't have her service gun on her. And I was like, what the hell is happening? And there was one part when she wanted to kill a character, and I was like, I have no bullets before this cutscene is happening, so why are people afraid that I'm gonna shoot that character when I have no more bullets inside of my gun? But apparently she has bullets now, because if in cutscenes you need bullets, she will have them, but if you need to fight off enemies, she won't have bullets. I liked that in the second DLC she kind of became self-aware of the trope in the video game that she was like the defenseless woman, and she was like, no, I'm gonna defend myself. So the DLC, at least the consequence, was kind of self-aware and kind of started fixing some of the issues that I had with the first DLC by giving you a weapon. And really, I don't like this when a DLC of the game tries to change things for you. It's like, oh, this game that you were used to this mechanics. Now we're gonna, well, okay, I understand what the developers are trying, but they implemented it so bad, and I think that boss that I had so much issues in the assignment was kind of badly programmed. I could see some of the shortcomings of these two DLC, especially since they recycled so much from the previous game. No, I can't recommend the DLCs. Maybe you can watch a video. That's even this is another factor. They implemented in this video game the right-click mouse button to skip some of the cutscenes if you don't want to see them anymore. And I pressed that button when I was watching the final ending for the consequence. So I even had to watch videos for this DLC because I couldn't watch it after I finished it. And the checkpoint system, oh my god, I really don't like when they they make you redo some of the parts in a video game when clearly uh, you get killed at one point, and then you're like, okay, why are you putting me redo so much before the checkpoint? Yeah, no, no, no. The two DLCs, I would give them like a 5. Only as I said before, the only good parts of those DLCs are that they are better framed than the previous game, and the collectibles for the letters for Kidman were pretty interesting, but also the other collectibles. I mean, oh my god, they even made model viewer a collectible in the DLCs, where you in the main game you receive them after you finish the video game. So I couldn't get all of those models. I was like, oh, you keep them. I would want to play the the main video game again, but not the DLC. So 5 out of 10. And finally, and I think the two DLCs took me like 3 hours and 3 hours, so 6 hours in total. But also an hour was artificially lengthened because I kept losing at that boss. And the final DLC, the execution, was a lot of fun. I really liked it. I really liked that they changed the perspective to a first person perspective. You could see the graphics better for this engine they use. Also, I want to point out that the game runs, if I remember well, on ID Tech 5. Yeah, ID Tech 5, the Rage engine. And yeah, it looks good. And from a first person perspective, it really looks good. I really liked it. And the execution was lots of fun. It reminded me of those execution games like Mad World or Bulletstorm. So yeah, the executioner was more fun, and I was like, what a breath of fresh air to finally have fun again with this main video game. So I'd give the executioner DLC a 7 or 7.5, let's say. Especially, no, it's a 7. It's a 7. It's also recycles a lot of the environments from the main game. It's a 7, and the story wasn't that much interesting, but still it was fun for the game mechanics. And I can't wait to play the next video game. I'll bring you a review when I finish The Evil Within 2. Thank you very much, and keep on listening.